Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, I've always wanted to share this story, but I never felt like it was like, I don't know, I've just never shared it like online. And because it sounds crazy, and like if you don't believe me, that's like totally fine. Like it doesn't bother me, but I know what happened and I was there. So this is I have two ghost stories, and this is my like one big one that like physically kept me up and like bothered me for a long time, because it like involved me. Um, Okay, I'll set the scene. I'm at my dad's. I live in the basement and we have push-up tile ceilings. Okay, that's a big part of it. I went to bed. I was like 16, 17. And I was kind of getting into like witchcraft. Not really, but like I was delving into the realms of like spirits and other worlds when I was in early high school or like middle high school. And things were like starting to like happen, but it might have just been me like freaking myself out, right? And then, well, one night, it's like a Sunday and well, it's a Saturday. I go to bed and I wake up and I sleep. When I was in high school, this is a big part of the story. I sleep like this. I sleep on my back like a vampire. Okay, and I don't move in my sleep. I sleep so soundly like that. So I'm sleeping in the basement like this on my bed, and I wake up at like midnight. Okay, and and I wake up freezing, like which isn't too abnormal if I don't have a blanket on me. So I wake up freezing, and I notice that my blanket's like at the all the way at the end of my bed and like off the bed. So I like get it, put it back on me, fall asleep. Wake up again, freezing. And this time it's like 2 a.m. and my blanket again is on the end of my bed. And ooh, I'm starting to think about where this story's going. It's freaking me out. Go to the end it's on the end of the bed and I, get it back and I'm like, what the heck? I go back to bed because I'm like, God, like just let me sleep. And this time I fall asleep. Oh goodness. I fall asleep and then maybe I think it's like 4 a.m. now. So like it's like 2 hour intervals. I wake up and my blanket is on me and I'm like, oh my God. And so I open my eyes. I open my eyes and I'm laying like this. I open my eyes, I'm laying on my bed and I look in my blanket, and this is like a heavy, thick blanket, like a throw, or I don't know if that's the right term, but it's like a big, thick blanket. And it's hanging from my ceiling like this, like at the end of my bed, like not end of my bed, like it's on the bed, like it's in, like my bed's here, my feet are right here, and then the blanket comes down from my ceiling, and it looks like someone that's like 6'4" is like underneath my blanket. I literally, when I tell you the fear that went through me, I literally thought my first instinct wasn't like spirit ghost scariness. My first thought was, oh my God, this is someone who broke into my house and is a serial killer and is like about to kill me. And so I like don't move my eyes from the person, and I like grab my phone and then I bolt to my door because I'm like, this is fight or flight and they probably are here to kill me. I'm gonna run. And so I mean, I've never ran that fast. I jump up my entire staircase. I run. I know everyone in my family locks their doors at night except for my older sister. So I ran into my older sister's room and I just slam her door and I lock it and I start sobbing. And I'm like, there's someone like in the basement, like, oh my God. And then I start thinking about it. I'm like, okay, there's not actually someone in the basement, but there's something going on that is like, Bob, like that couldn't, like I didn't put that up there. There's no way, right? I'm not a sleepwalker. My dad is convinced that I did it. There's no way. I've never been a sleepwalker. I've never gotten up in my sleep my entire 21 years of my life. Never, ever, ever. And so I'm like sobbing to my sister and she's like, Jack, like what we'll do, like at the time, like looking back at it now, you're like, why would you go back down there? But the thing is, I wanted to know if what I saw was real. And if it was like, I don't know if what was real. I felt like, was I dreaming? Was it going? So we go back down there, right? Me and my sister, and I'm going, if you're a person we have like, the cops are on the I don't know. We say something to like, if it was someone who was a killer, they wouldn't, I don't know. My sister wasn't really believing me. So like, she was like, let's just go down there. I go down there, open my door, and it's still hanging, and there's still that figure in my room. My sister's like, oh my God. And what it was my push-up tile ceiling. One of my push-up tiles was missing, and the blanket was up in my ceiling, and it was hanging. My big thick blanket was hanging from this little nail that was like this big, sticking out of one of the pieces of wood up in my ceiling, which I've never gone up in my ceiling before. So I wouldn't even subconsciously know that there's a nail in my ceiling, and it was hanging perfectly that it would create thinking about this gives me the shakes. Like, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Anyway, makes this perfect shape of a person. And then, so I take the blanket down and I don't sleep in my room for the next like 4 or 5 days. I don't know if you believe in saging or whatever, but it like really, this really like shook me to my core. So I bought like a special sage. I know there's like, I don't remember off the top of my head. But I knew at the time that there's like a certain type of sage you're not supposed to buy because of like Native Americans and how it's like harvested and it's actually not ethical. So I like made sure to like get sage that was ethical at the time. I remember that being part of it. And I sage my house and I like sage every window and every door. And I'm like, and I literally go around my whole house and I'm like, whatever spirit is here, you are not welcome. And I just kept repeating that in my family. My dad thought I was crazy, but like my sisters and my stepmom were like, yeah, like do your thing. And thanks for supporting me, because after that, I didn't sleep in my room for like the next week. I slept in my sister's room, but then I finally like went back down there and it was fine. But yeah, that is, and then I tried to replicate the blanket thing. Like I tried to hang the blanket there multiple times. And I could never get it to do what it did originally. Which is why I think it's so scary. Like nobody else in my family. The house was locked, by the way, so it's not like someone broke into that, one. Two, no one in my family would have done that. It's not a prank, and it really shook me to my core, and my sisters aren't the type of people to, like, prank me like that. Three, I didn't know that there was a nail in my ceiling. So even if, like, subconsciously I hung my blanket, how would I have, like, known to go into my ceiling and to, like, how would I know to go to my ceiling and to do that? And then lay back down and then freeze and wake up. Like, it just, nothing adds up. It doesn't add up, and that's what freaked me out. Anyway, I'm okay now, and I like to, I don't know. That's my story. I have nothing else to say. So thank you for listening if you stayed for all this time.
So in 2020, I moved into this house and I instantly started noticing things. Me and my family did. A couple of the things were small, things like hearing the faucet turn on when there was no one home, smelling flowery perfume, cigarette smoke, things like that. Well, a couple months after we moved in, I had two experiences happen within about a month of each other. The first experience, I was in my room and I came downstairs. The way that the downstairs is set up, you have your hallway and then the living room, the dining room, and then the kitchen. So when you come down the stairs, you can see the dining room from the stairs. So when I walked down, I saw my sister sitting at the table. Didn't think much of it, so I kept on walking, and I got into the kitchen and looked again, and she wasn't there. I was like, that's odd. I'm pretty sure I just saw her. So I walk into the kitchen, and I look off to the right into the living room, and my sister is asleep on the couch, and it was just me and her there. And thinking back to that, I definitely saw a person sitting at the table, and they had kind of like a gray face, and it almost looked like a little boy. So that was scary. And then about a month later, I was completely home alone, and I was just sitting in the kitchen. This is in the kitchen and living room area again. I was sitting at the island in the kitchen, just scrolling on my phone, and I heard someone tap on the window behind me. And I turned around, kind of looked at it, and I was like, I'm just hearing things, Kept on scrolling on my phone, and then I heard it again. And I was like, okay, my sister's pranking me, like she's up to something, whatever. So I ignored it, and I kept scrolling on my phone, and then maybe a couple minutes later, I heard more tapping on the window. So this time I actually turned around and looked, and I saw someone back away from the window. And I was like, okay, haha, you're so funny, just blew it off again. And I'm sitting there scrolling on my phone, and then it hits me a couple minutes later. I am completely home alone. My sister is in a completely different town at the moment. There is no one else there with me. So I was so freaked out that I called the police, and they came and did like a search around the area, went through the backyard, made sure everything was okay, and there was no one around. We were all good. Well, I still had trouble sleeping that night because I could have swore someone was knocking on the window and messing with me. And there's like no trees around that could have been knocking on the window, so it definitely was someone knocking on the window. Well, the next day comes and it's daylight out, so I go into the backyard to see if I can see anything, like any footsteps, any traces of anyone being in the backyard. And I walk up to the window where I heard the knocking, and I realize that where I saw the person's face was in like the top corner of the window, and that was about 7 to 8 feet high. No one is 7 to 8 feet tall, and it wasn't someone jumping up to that height because I saw them straight move back. And yeah, the only explanation I have for that is a ghost, because there's no way it was a person, no way. But yeah, that's my stories.
Okay, so I got a lot of requests for this video, so this is going to be my S. Walker story time. So this story takes place in the summertime of 2008, and at the time I was at my boyfriend's house, and his nephew was, there with us, and he needed to get home. So it was like 1:30, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning. We were driving him home, which he didn't live far, but he lived off on the reservation, and the road's completely unpaved in that area, and there's no street lights. So it's just complete pitch dark outside. And at the time, my boyfriend, he had this very annoying habit of blasting his music as loud as humanly possible every time we got into the car. So it's like 1:30 in the morning, and he has a sound system in his car, so the car is like shaking and rattling while we're going down this silent road. So in the distance, you can see the single lane bridge that's up ahead, and we're kind of approaching it pretty quickly until something flies across the road. And I say flies because it moved so quickly, so fast, that all you saw was like a black blur across the street. And immediately we turn off the music and we're all just completely silent. So we proceed toward the bridge, and then the smell comes. And if you're familiar with the smell of like decay or like dead animal, that's the exact smell that came in through the windows. So we ended up rolling up the windows because the smell is so strong and bad that even after we rolled up the windows, the smell was still there, and it was for a little bit. So we proceed and get toward the area where his nephew lived, and like I said, there's no street lights or anything, so it's still pitch dark, pitch black. And there's a few houses sprinkled here and there, a few trailer houses, a couple of hogans, and he lives toward the end of this area, which leads to a dead end. And nobody had their generators on at this point because it's like 1:30 in the morning, everybody's asleep. So when we get to his house, it's completely black. So he books it the fuck out of the car once we get to his house, and I really don't blame him, because if I had that choice, I'd probably do the same thing. So he's out, we see him get in the house, we turn around and head back the same way that we came in. And we get to the point where the bridge was, and we're crossing the bridge, and right after, I just happened to look outside at the window, and at this point I'm looking out the window and I see a pair of red eyes staring from the brush. And I say red, I mean red, like red. And I don't know if they were like actually glowing, but it could have been my imagination that they were glowing, but that's what it seemed like to me. And I was so scared that I just didn't say anything, and I just looked forward and didn't look out the window again. And we get back to my boyfriend's house, and we don't acknowledge it, we don't really talk about it, and I ended up bringing it up later on, and he just did not want to talk about it. Immediately it was like, I know what I saw, I don't want to talk about it, we don't need to we don't need to say anything. I'm like, okay, completely respect that, because a lot of times it's like, same vein as the Appalachian folklore, where if you see something, no you didn't. If you hear something, no you didn't. Not a lot of Native Americans talk about S-walkers, mainly because you do speak about them. You can attract them to you. And especially to someone who's not a Native American, you especially don't speak to them about these type of things because it can really bring them to you. And it's just not a good situation. It can bring a lot of bad luck. Like, a lot of times if a Native American person does see an S-walker and looks at them in the eyes, or they look at them in the eyes, they can get sick afterward. Like, physically sick. So it's not really talked about too often, except with like the younger kids, because, you know, a lot of them either they don't believe it or they just think it's like a joke, but it's not. So we didn't really discuss it, and I only told the story maybe like to a couple of people in my family, but other than that, I really don't talk about them, mainly because I just don't want to attract anything to me, even though I don't live in New Mexico anymore. Don't live anywhere near it, but you never know what you might attract if you say it out loud. So trying to be as respectful as possible and not acknowledge the actual name. But that's my S-walker story time, and I have a couple of other stories to tell if anyone else is interested. Just let me know.